What's up guys, YGO Strats got a demo of sorts for an upcoming video series I'd like to get going. I'll explain the details and the nitty gritties in a future video, but the idea is basically that my friends and I meet once a week to duel, so might as well film it, might as well make it an entire season, sort of like a sporting event where we accrue points over our wins over the weekly duels, and then at the end we have a semifinals and a finals and we get a trophy, or maybe I'll buy a box for one of us, or who knows, we'll figure it out. Point is, I'm going to be filming duels, so here I've got my Paleo Frog versus my friend's Dragonmaids. Paleo Frog won the community vote, so it is what I'll be playing for the first season of whatever I end up calling this. And yeah, this is just a demo, so let me know. Camera angle could be better, lighting could be better, and lighting could definitely be better. Whatever it is you see that you like, that you don't like, whatever change you might want to see implemented, just let me know. And I'll give a little more detailed version of what the idea for the series will be as I kind of hammer out the finer points. But without a further delay, let's get to the duels. So I won the die roll and I get to go first. I've opened Desires, and that is fantastic. I didn't open a Frog, which is a little less ideal, but regardless, 2 extra cards in my opening hand is nothing to complain about. So I draw my 2. My friend here does not have the Ash Blossom, which is fantastic. I get a Fiend Comedian, a Dinomischus, I've got a Trap Trick, an Ice Dragon's Prison, and Olenoids. I can't quite see what else I have there. In the banish pile, I got 1 apiece of the Ronin, Dupe, and Swap. So not great, not terrible. I'm not going to complain too much. Better than both Ronins, so okay, it's double Olenoid, so my hand here is not all that ideal. It's game 1, so I'm not terrified of a Black Row blowout card. I don't know of any main decked Feather Dusters, but I end up deciding to set 4, I believe. I keep an Olenoids in hand to keep the Dinomischus alive, and then I've got IDP set just for some security to set for turn 3. So I pass the turn, he opens up with Parlor, because when does the Dragonmaid player not get to open up Parlor? I end up flipping the cards, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure I let this go. In large part because I can't negate it anyways. So he sends a Tidying, and I believe he's going to be linking off into a Striker Dragon. That's the usual play that I've seen him do, so I'm just kind of letting it happen. He takes a moment getting the Parlor off the field, but it's all good. And so he's going to add the Boot Sector Launch from deck to hand, and then from there, I guess, just go off. Again, nothing here that I care about stopping too much in the immediate. So he banishes the Tidying, and he summons back the Parlor, and I apologize because the glare on Tidying there is bad. Gonna try and get some better lighting for next week. But all of this is fine in my books. He links off Striker and Parlor into the Hieratic Spheres, which is a very annoying card. I'm not too fond of it. Very disruptive, especially when you're playing back row and you have to wait for an entire turn for it to be live again, but it is what it is. And so he ends up setting 2 and then passing. Probably should have poked with Striker and Parlor first, but whatever. So in the end phase, I decide to Olenoids and just random roll. I end up hitting a Tidying, which is nice, and then after that ends up resolving, I decide to Dinomischus the Spheres because I don't want it on my field. He doesn't have a response, so I get to summon back an Olenoids, which is very nice. And then here I'm just kind of explaining that it's all during his end phase, so he doesn't get to use his cards, unfortunately. And then after that, I believe I'm going to chain a 3rd card here. I believe I'd use Trap Trick. Yeah. So I use Trap Trick, I'm going to chain one of my Paleos in Grave, so now I've got my 2 Paleos on board, I'm good to go next turn, Opabenia, Toad, whatever it is I end up feeling. And then for Trap Trick, I believe I settle on Imperm, because Imperm is a very solid card. I can't really see a downside to having an Impermanence. I suppose there's an argument to set maybe a Dimensional Barrier, and then have it live to just chain and go off on this turn, but I believe actually I banished 2 of my 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier with that opening turn Desires. So I couldn't do that, and I figured, yeah, Imperm's a good enough backup. So in my main phase, I decide to go for Opabenia. Opabenia is just fantastic, one of the best cards in the deck. And here, my game plan was to use Opabenia's effect to search another Olenoids, and then he ends up using his set card on the Opabenia, which is an Infinite Impermanence, if I'm not mistaken. He's telling me he's thinking about it, so I stop, and so no search, but at the end of the day, I get what I want regardless, because I just wanted to have a Olenoids to summon back another Paleo. So he chains Impermanence, I chain my Opabenia and Grave, I've got another Beater on board, and then I have a Frog in my hand, if I'm not mistaken. I believe I top-decked a Ronin Totem? Yeah, I top-decked Ronin Totem for turn, so Opabenia, and I'm going to go into a Toad here, which is just fantastic, simple, but effective for the game. And then I'm just going to poke with my Toad, because what else do you do? So I swing in for 22, it goes uninterrupted, and then I'm just going to pass the turn. And I believe I set one additional card. I believe I set the Ice Dragon's Prison that was in my hand. During his standby phase, I'm going to activate Totally Awesome, and I believe I summon out a Swap Frog. My reason being I want material in the graveyard for Ronin on the follow-up turn, regardless of whatever it is that's about to happen. So, just explaining that I get a Froggy, so I summon my Swap Frog, I send a dupe, and then I'm good to go. So he opens up and he uses Lorepar and targets Toad to negate the effects of Toad while it's face up on my field, or at least for the turn. Not 100% certain. So I just shotgun Toad and take the dragon. I'm familiar enough with Dragonmaids. I know that he can bounce to summon that out and do a whole bunch of shenanigans. So I'm just gonna say no. And he opens with he follows up with Tidying. And then he summons out Parlor, and I'm asking how many cards are in his hand just to try and figure out his resource game and all that fun stuff. And then I ultimately decide to imperm the Parlor, just because I feel like Foolish Burial effects are just ripe to be abused. I don't want to let him get any access to any chamber or the fusion spell or whatever. So he follows it up by normal summoning Albaz. This is his one of tech, which is annoying. It gets to fusion summon using the set Lopar that I have down here, which is kind of funny. He has to discard the Boot Sector launch to get it, which kind of sucks for him. But, I mean, it doesn't look like he's got much of his rocket engine going regardless, so he ends up making the Titan Clad using the Lorepar. Can't even think of its name, because none of my other monsters are valid targets. They all have under 2,500, and that's his Albaz tech. So he ultimately decides to run over Totally Awesome with Albaz, which is fine by me. I use Toad's effect to get back a Swap Frog. This is just going to be a whole lot of advantage for me, and I'm more than okay with it. So if you saw there, my top deck is my spicy one-of that I'm trying purely because it's at 1 in this format. I'm running a 41 card Paleo deck with 1 Change of Heart. Now, should that be cut? Absolutely. I should never be maining Change of Heart with Paleo. I only want to go first, but I don't care. It's funny and it's old. I'm using it. So I open up my turn and I go and I search out Canadia with Olenoids. Sorry, not Olenoids. Opabenia. Mix those two up a lot. And then I'm going to, I believe, use IDP. No, I'm going to open with Swap Frog just to kind of get some more froggies and do some stuff. This turn's funny because it works out in my favor, but I make a colossal misplay like an idiot, so you'll get to see that in a moment. I do the math, and his Titan Clad is at 36 because it gained attack equal to the combined levels, so it gained 11, and that means that 36 plus 22 is 58, which is game. So I just need to make a Toad and take the Titan Clad. So I can clear the Parlor by using IDP, and I choose Lorepar and Parlor, just banish them both, get them out of the way. From there, I can chain a Paleo, and literally right here, all I have to do to win is overlay into Toad or something with 22 or more, and then use Change of Heart. But instead, what I'm going to do is just neg an advantage like a complete moron, because I decide with my 2 materials on board that oh no, okay, so I'm going to use Ronin Totem first, because apparently I just want to flex. I believe I overlay my Ronin Totem and my Opabenia. Sorry, for my Ronin Totem and my Olenoids for Opabenia, which you're probably wondering, why are you doing that? Opabenia's search is a hard once per turn. And you're going to see me try to activate its effect here, and then pick up the card and read it, which is probably the first time I've ever done that, so I realized immediately I can't do that, that's just cheating, and so I've kind of blundered here. This is kind of throwing the means for me to make game. So I'm like, okay, I'll commit. I made Opabinia, I won't do a take back, I'm not a coward. So I link off my 2 Opabinias into Starboy, just completely killing any chance I have at a follow-up if this turn doesn't work out the way I want. But it's okay, because I've got all the froggies in the grave. I just banish a swap for Ronin, and now I overlay these 2 for a totally awesome, which is at boosted 27, so now we're over kill, and then finally the change of heart that I should have just immediately done. So I take his Titanclad, and that will be game. Scoop it up, game 2. So he gets to go first now, which is a horrifying prospect. I have again opened Desires, you can see. That's because I am based and skillful as a duelist. He opens up his turn with a Pot of Prosperity. He banishes 3. And then you're probably wondering why there's only 2. He's got a Chaos Ruler coming in the mail or something. So I think I just I give him a Digimon card to proxy his Chaos Ruler, but it's functionally it doesn't matter. It's a face down banished Chaos Ruler, and now he's gonna excavate 3. And I don't have the Ash. I'm not maining Ash. I might want to change that. So he reveals a Quick Launch, a Boot Sector Launch, and a level 8. I can't remember. Absolrouter. That's it. Which, I mean, yeah, it's a Dragonmaid deck. So it's just Dragonmaid, but with a sizable Dragon Link package. So he takes the Quick Launch, he'll activate it, and he's going to summon, I believe, a Recharger, not a Striker, which surprised me a bit. I was thrown for a loop. I wasn't quite sure what's going on here, but he is aware of what's going on. So he's going to link that off into a Striker Dragon, which is fantastic. He can search the Boot Sector Launch because we know that he doesn't have it. We just saw him put it to the bottom of his deck. And so he'll search out that Boot Sector Launch, and he kind of missequences, but I'm not too picky. I allow it. So he's going to Nocto when he summons Striker Dragon and then Boot Sector. Not the end of the world. I'll just try and remind him, slap it down immediately in case any commenter feels like getting picky. So he links these 2 off for a Romulus. He does not get the draw because he started with Prosperity. And I do have an Imperm in my hand, and I kind of debated using it here, but I wanted to see the full extent of what it was he was going to be doing, so I didn't use it. If you're wondering why Mirror Jade's on board, my friend's just flexing. I'm cutting away shuffles and whatnot to save us all time, so I'm not just rambling over absolutely nothing. But Romulus is going to search Ravine, and he's going to activate his Ravine, pitch a Lorepar, which is apparently a 1-of, but I see him open it every time, so he'll send Absolrouter, and then with Absolrouter, he will add Tracer. And again, I've just got an Imperm chillin' doggo on the field, because dog's gonna do what a dog's gonna do.
What the dog doing?
Watching my buddy activate Hospitality. So he'll summon out a Nurse from his hand, and then he'll send an Ernest to the graveyard from his deck. And you can see me, I'm kind of mulling over the Imperm, but I'm holding it. So he uses Boot Sector Launch, he brings out a Tracer. He uses Tracer's effect, he destroys the Boot Sector in order to summon another Recharger from his deck. And then he is going to sync off the Recharger and the Tracer to make Borreload Savage. And this is the point where I decide to use the Impermanence. I use it when it activates its effect to equip the link from the graveyard, just so that I don't have to deal with any of the negates or even just the boosted attack that it would get. So, kind of rewarded for holding on to this all turn. Probably should have used it much earlier than this, but again, I was kind of just wanting to see where it all went, and worst case, I would use it for the opening move of my first turn, just bait the negate. So I draw for turn, and again, I've got the Desires, so I throw it down ignorantly, and I believe I banished 9 initially, and then I grab the 10th. We're not hard cheating here. Taking a look at it in a moment, I believe, again, the banishes were pretty solid. If I'm not mistaken, Change of Heart and my other Desires are in that pile of 10, which, all things considered, not bad. I want my traps, I want my frogs, and I don't care to see the other 2 spells. So my full frog engine is untouched by this, which is lovely to see, because I can use it. Unfortunately for me, I believe I've got double dupe, which is doing nothing. So I set a dupe frog, and then I am going to set 4. He doesn't have a hand anymore. He is out of a hand, so he's gunning on the top deck, and I can see his full board. So he top decks Parlor, because they'll get Parlor one way or the other. I don't have a negate for this, so I'm just going to let it slide. I have Fiend Comedian, and Fiend Comedian is going to be strong this one. So he sends the Dragonmaid Tidying. I believe that was a Draco Sack on the field there for a moment, as my friend was trying to convince him to play that. Wild. So he's got Parlor, he's got Nurse, there's a Romulus, and a 3k beater in the form of Borreload. So there's a lot he could be doing right now. So he summons out Triangle Dragon, which is a card I haven't seen played in a minute, so I need to read that. And then with Triangle Dragon, he can pay 500, and he'll be able to revive a level 5 or higher dragon from his graveyard, so he brings back Absolouter. Just getting some crazy good advantage here. His Absolouter will search whenever he links it off, and then he links off those two into a Unicorn. He has no hand, so I'm not worried about any sort of spinning, and then he will activate the Absolouter's effect to search. And so he grabs a Tracer. Unfortunately for him, he does not have the Boot Sector launch anymore, so he doesn't get to get the free summon from it. I apologize for the cam shakiness. That dog is being a dog. And so he activates Tidying, and I choose to chain Fiend Comedian. I call heads, and I get heads. And he has never seen Fiend Comedian before, so he isn't aware that it gets to banish the entire grave, and that throws a colossal wrench in his plan. The reason I didn't do it on the Triangle Dragon was simply because he could chain the Tidying, and I wanted to stem the Tidying, because the Tidying could bring back the Nurse, which could just overflow into more advantage. So he links those two off there, the Triangle and the Unicorn and the Romulus, into access code, and then at the resolution of the access code's effect to gain attack, I choose to compulse. If that isn't legal, let me know, but I'm 99.9% sure on that play. I know you can Veiler it at the resolution of the attack gaining effect, so I'm assuming I can compulse it here. And so I do. It's board's pretty well maintained. There's still the problem of the Borreload Savage Dragon, because even though it isn't anything crazy, it's not negates or anything, it's still a 3k beater. So he attacks my dupe frog, which works out well in my favor, because now I can search out a swap, and I already have another dupe in hand, so I can go off hard here once it passes to my turn. So I draw, and my hand, I'm doing pretty good right now. I toss the Swap Frog to I toss the Dupe Frog to special summon Swap Frog, send a Ronin, activate Swap Frog's effect, normal summon the Swap Frog again, and send, I believe, another Ronin? Oh no, another Swap Frog. So just gas, because why not? Now, I'm kind of forced here to use my Ice Dragon's Prison, since I could go into Sky Cavalry Centuria, but I don't feel like that's optimal, so I instead decide to IDP. He's got the Romulus engraved, so I can summon out Romulus, and then banish Romulus and the Borreload Savage, and that clears out that 3k beater for me. He doesn't banish it, but it's not too big of an issue. If you can't tell, this duel is pretty close to the end, so I decide to banish swap for a Ronin, and then I'm going to overlay for a Toad. Now, the worst part of this duel is I haven't really seen any Paleos. I'm living purely off the Frog engine, so ideally I'd love to make Opabinia, but it wouldn't have a trap as a material. That's pretty useless. So I attack for 22, bringing him down to 53. I set the last remaining card that was in my hand, and then during the standby phase, I'm going to activate the effect of the Totally Awesome. So by detaching the Ronin Totem, I would summon out probably a dupe just for protection, and then he has nothing left in his gas tank. He's got a Tracer and a Nocto. Striker's banned, so Paleo wins it out. Quick 2-0 in favor of the Frog. You'll love to see it. And yeah, I'm hoping that that was enjoyable enough for you. It's my first time commentating over a duel, so by all means let me know any improvements. I want to make this as enjoyable, as watchable as it can possibly be. any editing, lighting, all of it, leave it in the comments. And hopefully you enjoyed. And I'll see you next time on YGO Strats.